Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Taraf, how are you?
Thank you, Baruch Hashem. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we're doing Gimel. So it says here, Avi Azri Asar Afilu Tafshil Shenasa Besafek Betsa Shenoda B'Yom Tov. So he brings a tour here, which we saw last week, which says that this rabbi, the Avi Azri, forbade even a cooked dish which had a egg which was doubtfully hatched on Yom Tov, doubtfully laid on Yom Tov. So regarding that, he says here, Bet Yosef, Ka kata Mordechai beresh betza. That's what it says, the Mordechai. And v'chen pasak b'sharei durah. Also, this book paskins that way. Deim libno machal b'safek betza shenolda b'yom tov. That if they right made a food and there's an egg there which is doubtfully laid on Yom Tov, or mimeno tarnagol, or let's say they put some stuffing into the chicken with that egg, asur is forbidden. The whole thing is forbidden. Okay, interesting. Wow. Okay, so then he says, "Ulefi she'mashe piresh Rabbeinu Tam," and according to that which Rabbeinu Tam explained, right, it says to Teha Amrinan Devar sheyesh lo matrin dafka kashu b'ayin. That when we say right that this concept of something which is going to be permitted in the future, that's only something which is in its original form. So it says there, right, that the tour he brings there that the cooked dish is allowed, since his intention was not in vain. So not exactly the way I translate it, right? It means like this, right? That his intention was not to waste that food. I guess that's what it means. So that's the tour. So now comes Bet Yosef, right? Hopefully explain a little bit better. So it says, right, Bet Yosef, it seems like this is not really so solid, convincing, right? The Rabbeinu Tam Nami Asur. So he says, why? Because you can really say that even according to Rabbeinu Tam, it's forbidden mishum de lechazuta v'tama avid, because it's made for taste and chazuta, right? What is chazuta? That means good appearance, right? Nice color, whatever it is, right? Something like that. Avid. So since it's made to improve the dish, for regarding the taste and appearance, so therefore he says, right, that you can say that it's forbidden according to Rabbeinu Tam. Right? So he says the rule is like this: whatever is made to give taste to the food does not get nullified. So this is like, again, right, that we're going back to the rules of kashrut, right? And so this is also an important concept to understand, because we say several times, right? We've said already that something which, if a non-kosher, right, ingredient, whatever, right, gets mixed into something kosher, or something permitted and something forbidden get mixed together, the rule is, right, that it gets nullified. Sometimes in the majority, sometimes you need a 1/60th, but depending on the case, right? But here, what he's saying is that it doesn't work. Why? Because if it's made for taste, it doesn't work. It never gets nullified. So what does that mean? I'll give you an example, right? Let's say I put a spice into the food, right? So what is the spice coming for, right? It's coming to improve the taste, obviously. So if that's the case, it doesn't get nullified, even though it's less than 1/60th of the mixture, right? So if you want to know, right, why that is, what's the reason why that is? That something that comes for taste does not get nullified. So I'll give you the answer, right? The answer is like this: that the whole concept of 1/60th, right, that it gets nullified, the rabbis made this rule. It was depending on the assertion, right? Based on the assertion that something which is less than 1/60th, you will not taste it in the food. And therefore, it's permitted. But here, right, that doesn't apply. Why? Because since it's coming for the sake of the taste, so therefore you see from there, right, that it never gets nullified because you always taste that spice or whatever it is right in there. So this is the reason why something which is made for taste does not get nullified. So, if you put it, as we said, the example is, if you put a spice into the food, right, that will not get nullified in 1/60th because the whole point is the taste there. So therefore, it's going to be forbidden, right? Okay, so that's the story there. Okay. וכן כתב המורכי, that's what it says in מורכי, דמטעם זה גם כן היה אומר אבי עזרי דלא בתיר, right? It says also, the Mordechai says, the Abi Ezri also said the same thing, that because of this reason, it does not get nullified, even in 1/60th, as we said.
Kavod, who's the other rabbi besides Mordechai? Can you repeat one more time, please?
So we had here Rabbeinu Tam and the Avi Ezri, right? The two.
And the last two, Mordechai and.
Right. So that's about it. We have the Mordechai here. Right? That's all we got.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
As far as I can remember. Okay. So right, that's the story there. So okay, good. So what do we see from here, right? Just to recap that whole idea, there's two reasons why this would not get nullified here, the food. One is because davar sheyesh lo matirin. What does that mean? That it's going to be allowed tomorrow. Today's not allowed. Tomorrow it's allowed. So wait till tomorrow. Right? Why do you want to nullify it? That's one reason. The other reason is because since it's coming for taste, so it doesn't get nullified, as we said, right? We just explained now. Okay, good. So that's the story there. So it seems like because of this reason, the Rosh wrote in the Tshuva, Harotev shenitkan b'yom tov, right? The broth that was made on Yom Tov, the Bitzah Bat Yomar, and you used an egg there, which was laid today. Asur, so it says it's forbidden. The davar sheyesh lo matirinhu. So again, right, same concept. Why is it forbidden? Because tomorrow it'll be allowed, right? Even though it's not allowed today. So therefore, it doesn't get nullified. V'la batil, right? Uvagot share dura. So this book brings also. Matzati says, I found that book. Katuv b'shem Marav Isalan. That says, I found the name of this rabbi. Right? Im libno bo machal, livnu bo machal, o mil'u bo tarnegolet asur. So here he's talking about similar things which we already discussed, right? Which is he's coming here to color the food, or right to put a stuffing inside there, right? In the chicken, whatever it is. So things like this, as we said, doesn't get nullified, right? On Yom Tov because of this concept that we mentioned. So he said that's the custom. He says, even though apparently the Rambam and the Rosh have a machloket here, to have betzad b'machal v'tarnegolet min b'sheno minohu. So he says, right, that we're now discussing all kinds of laws of kashrut here, right? So it's good. You learn all these concepts, right, which are important to know if you want to know about kashrut, right? So another concept here, which is teaching you here, which is that um, when you have mixtures, okay, and we talk about mixtures, they get nullified sometimes. So there's two types of mixtures, okay. One is called min bemino. What does that mean? The two types of food, which are the same type, got mixed up, right, together. The only difference is one is permitted, the other one is not permitted, right? One is kosher, the other one's not kosher, whatever, right? But the same type of food. So, for instance, right, the classic example. What's an example? Let's say you have, ground beef, right, and gets mixed up there, some ground pork, So, when you grind the meat, right, they all look the same. You know what I mean? All ground meat looks the same. So, if one gets mixed up into the other, you can't really see the difference between them. Like they're going to look the same. So that's called min mem. It's like one type of food. Right? It looks the same. Right? That's one example, right? Hmm. Okay. So, and then you have another type of mixture, which is min sheno bimino. So what does that mean? That you have two foods that are mixed up, but they're not the same type of food. So, so when it's not the same type, you can pretty much like identify, the other food, right, of the mixture, right, the non-kosher one, whatever, the forbidden one. You can identify it because it looks different. So there's two different types of mixtures. So here's the thing, right? What's the difference in halacha, by the way? If it's the same type of food or it's a different type of food? So there's a big difference. You know why? Because the rule is that when it's the same type of food, it gets nullified in majority. So if you have like 51% kosher, 49% not kosher, it's kosher because it's one type of food. But when it comes to something which is not the same type of food, right? So then majority doesn't do the job. It has to be 1/60th, right? So that's a difference. Right? Big difference, by the way, night and day, right? So that's the way it works. Okay, so let's see what he's talking about here. So it says, right, that בתרנגולות אסור, וכל מה ממש פליגי דהה ביצה מאכל בנקודת ואין שאין אבינו, נוכל לומר, דספיר עלי, כשינויה דכתבו בתוספות, so he says, we can say that he holds like the answer which was given in Tosfot, דהכה דהקדרה מתקנת בכך, that if the pot, right, is improved, the dish is improved, with this thing, with this ingredient. So as we said, right, what does that mean? It improves the taste, right? That's the main example. Chashi min bemino, so it's considered to be like one type. Oh, very interesting. ובליבון הביצה מתקן התרנגולת והתבשיל דעושים כן כדי לבשם התרנגולת. Right, so he says, same thing, when it comes to the egg whites. So he says, those egg whites are coming to improve the chicken, right, or the cooked dish, right, they make like that because that makes it like taste better, it gives it some kind of a nice flavor, whatever, right. So he says it seems like that was Ravia, this rabbi, right, required also a different reason, also to forbid it, mishum the chazuta, because of the way it looks, right? It looks different. In other words, it changes the appearance of the food, makes it more appetizing, right? Whatever it is. ולא רצה לומר משום דהווה מין במינו. He didn't want to say, right, this is the reason why, because it's the same type. The Sabra Kishinuya Kama Shkatvu, because he holds like the first answer that was given there. Okay, whatever, right? Adkan. That's the end of it. Okay, so that's interesting. And he goes on here. Katav Aran, Beresh Betzah, in the beginning of the Betzah, right? Masachet Gemara, Bet Amud Bet. It says over there, the Had Dabar Sheish Bo Atirin, that which we say, right? Something which is going to be permitted tomorrow or in the future, whatever it is, right? Afilu be'elef lo batila. We say it doesn't even get nullified in 1,000. Dafka bemino, that's only in the same type. Aval shelo bemino, but if it's a different type, right, batil, it does get nullified, it says. Interesting. Da'afi mashma be'edia be'perek anoder. So that's the way it implies. It says in this perek, mina bushal, which is in Nedarim, nun bet amud aleph. Adkan, v'chen katav od perek batra de avodah zarah. He also wrote this in the last chapter of Avodah Zarah. Lamed vav amud bet. V'hen hen divrei Rabbeinu Tam. So it says these are the words of Rabbeinu Tam as well. Same thing. Shkatav Rabbeinu besamuch, that right, the two wrote close by. Besamuch ubesefer Yorodea siman kuf bet. Right. Also, he wrote this in Yorodea, and kuf bet, chapter 102. Uktavum Tosfot b'perek Meshirin, and Tosfot wrote it in this Gemara, right? Lamed Chet Amud Aleph. So they wrote that Ita behedya b'Yerushalmi, that this is the way it's written in Yerushalmi. V'chen dat Rambam, also the Rambam holds like this. Perek Tetvav Milchot Machlot Asurot. V'dat Rashba, also the Rashba, the Torah Tabayit, in this book Torah Tabayit. Aruch. Okay. Katav HaKolbo, says the Kolbo, B'tzah shenorda b'Yom Tov, right? An egg which was hatched, laid on Yom Tov, right? Bashla b'shogeg, bo bayom, and it was cooked that day inadvertently, right? Ima basar, with the meat. But tafshila kol mutar. So he says, right, it's allowed, this dish. You know that egg is mixed in there. But he says, except what? You gotta remove the egg, right? Shemaniach ad lemachar. So what does he say, right? Leave the egg for tomorrow. It'll be permitted tomorrow, right? Once Yom Tov goes out. Meanwhile, just have the the meat, today. Okay. Shemaniach ad lemachar. V'deha kaima lan giule betzin mutarot. So he says, what's the reason why? Because we hold, right, that things which are mixed up with the taste of eggs are allowed. Why? Look what he says, right? Something interesting. He says egg whites don't give taste to the food. Wow. So egg whites are like tasteless, that's what he's saying, right? Interesting. So there was a practical case like this, in a certain town, that you had eggs which were laid on Yom Tov, והושמו בתפלה שקוראים panada, and they were right. They were placed in a dish which is called panada. והתירו הכל, they allowed everything, חוץ מן הביצים, but they said don't eat the eggs. So what does that mean? Remove the eggs, right, and everything else is allowed. Okay, interesting. So, right, so what is it telling you here? That even though the taste of the eggs, right, apparently should be there, nevertheless it's allowed anyway. Why? Because there's no taste in egg whites. Okay, good. ולפי מה שכתב רבנו בשם רבנו תם, so that which the Rabbeinu, the two wrote, named Rabbeinu Tam, belav hai tama na mishare. So he says, even without that reason, it's allowed to tamo batil b'shishim, right? Because he says also the taste will be nullified in the 1/60th. Okay, interesting. So, okay, very nice. Wow. Okay, we learned a lot of interesting things here. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch, right, and see, right, the summary of the summation of all this, right? Beautiful discussion here. So says Shulchan Aruch like this: Betza shenolda b'Yom Tov, right? Betza was laid on Yom Tov, as we said, right? Egg, right? It was laid on Yom Tov. Shnitbashla b'shogeg in basar v'tavshil. So what happened was, right, that that egg, by mistake, got cooked together with meat or some kind of a dish. Im yesh samech negdo, right, akol mutar. So it says if you have 1/60th, everything is allowed. Chutz min habetza, except the egg, right? So in other words, you got to remove the egg. So why do you have to remove the egg? Because, as we said, right, it doesn't get nullified. Um, and the reason is because there's two reasons actually, right? One is because it's going to be allowed tomorrow. That's one thing. The other reason is because you can still see it, right? It's still visible. So something which you can see does not get nullified. So therefore, you have to remove it. And אבל אם לבנו בו התבשיל וכיוצא בזה, מידי דלכה זוטא ותם מטעם מעביד לא בטיל, right? But it says, on the other hand, if they use this egg for the purpose of giving color, right, or giving, right, taste to the food, does not get nullified. So, right, again, what's the reason why it won't get nullified here? Two things, right? One is because it's going to be permitted tomorrow. Therefore, it's called davar sheyesh lo matirin. That's one thing. The other reason also is because it's coming for taste, right? So we said something which is coming for taste does not get nullified. Interesting. Okay, very nice. Yeah. So, but just to recap all this information, right? We can digest all this information, right? All this good food over here we can digest, right? Whatever. So, what are we talking about? We already discussed, right, last time that, or last week, whatever it was. I think we started yesterday. We started a new chapter, right? So I think we said yesterday that the rule is like this, that when you have an egg which was laid on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat it that day or to move it, right? It's muktzah. What's the prohibition of this egg? Why is it prohibited? Because of molid, right? Something like new, which was born, something new was created. So therefore, it's forbidden. So therefore, right, this egg, not only in itself is it forbidden, but also, as we said, right, if it gets up mixed into a mixture, the whole mixture is forbidden. Why is the mixture forbidden? Because it's going to be allowed tomorrow, right? Once the Yom Tov goes out, it'll be allowed. So therefore, right, it doesn't get nullified even in a mixture. But right, what's the exception to that rule? What's the exception? The exception is that if you made a right with eggs together, some dish, right? By mistake, right? You cooked it with the dish, even though you weren't supposed to do that, right? Because it's muktzah, as we said, can't use it, can't move it. So if you did that by mistake, and it wasn't for taste, just you popped it in there, whatever, right? So if that's the case, right, you could just remove the eggs, and the rest of the dish you can have. So why is that? Because you didn't put the eggs in there for taste, to improve the taste of the dish. So therefore, it's allowed. So right, I'll give you an example, right? When my daughter was here, now she went back to Israel, but when she was here, she used to make cholent, every week, right? Whatever for Shabbat. So she put eggs in there. It's like a custom, they put eggs in the cholent. So what happened was that let's say, right, for instance, you put some eggs in there, right? Now the eggs in the cholent, are they coming for taste to make the cholent taste better?
No.
No, yeah, of course, right? Of course not. It's just coming, to give you an extra, right, dimension to your food there, right? To have it with some eggs. So it's not coming to make the cholent taste better. So therefore, right? I'm sorry, what was that again?
The cholent makes the eggs taste better.
Right. Yeah, it's true. You're right. It's the other way around. You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the way it is. So if that's the case, right, then that egg, could just remove it if it was forbidden, that egg, right? You could remove it and have the cholent, it's not a problem. That's what we're saying. But here, right, we're talking about Yom Tov, which is a little bit different, right? We're talking about that you're cooking on Yom Tov. Okay, because on Shabbat, obviously, we're not cooking, right? We're cooking Erev Shabbat, Friday, right? Whatever. Okay, we got the point. Okay, good. So let's go to the next one, Dalid. So we already said, right, that in the Torah. So what's the solution that you have with this egg, right? If it was laid on Yom Tov, you can't really do anything with it. So the only thing we said you could do with it is to like overturn a utensil, and cover it. This way it won't shatter, and you can have it tomorrow. Right? So that's what we're saying over here, in the Bet Yosef. Let's go to Bet Yosef for a second. So, right, says Bet Yosef, he brings a source for this. Braita ben Perek Kama de Bitzah, right? It's a Braita in the first Perek of Bitzah. V'nitbaer b'siman shin yud, right? It was explained already, it says in chapter 310, which is talking about the laws of Shabbat. So, shekachi dat roa poskim, right? That most of the poskim agree like that. That, as we said, right? If the egg was laid on Yom Tov or Shabbat, it's muktzah, and you can't do nothing with that. Can't even move it. So, says Bet Yosef here, ושם מתבהר שלדברי הכל אין נותנים כלי תחת התרנגולת לקבל בצאתה מפני שהוא מבטל כלי נכנו. So he brings here another interesting thing, right? Which is that, maybe I'll do it this way, right? I know like the chicken is about to lay an egg. Whatever, right? Yeah. And so what I'll do is I'll place like a little bucket, under the chicken. And this way, right, he'll lay it right into the bucket, a little tray there, whatever it is, right? Are you allowed to do that? Is there any problem with that? So he says, right, that there is a problem. To place some kind of utensil there, a bucket or whatever it is, right? Some kind of a pot, whatever. So what's the problem with that? The problem is mevatel kli behechano, right? So what does that mean? So there, in the laws of muktzah, right, on Shabbat and Yom Tov, there's a little concept here like this, which says that you cannot nullify a utensil from its use. And that's what you'll be doing over here if you did this. Why is that? Because what happens is like this, right? When that egg is laid into the, right, whatever it is, right, the bucket, whatever. What happens is that because the egg is muktzah, so also what's under it, right? The utensil also becomes muktzah, because it becomes a base for the muktzah. So therefore, it also becomes muktzah, right? So the rabbis forbade to do this. Why is that? Because you're nullifying the utensil from being used. Now you can't use it anymore; it's unusable. Why? Because you got muktzah inside there, so you can't move it. So it says Bet Yosef, right? This is the reason why you can't do that. So you can't place something under the chicken to snatch the egg there, right? To grab the egg. Can't do that. So as we said, right, the only solution is overturn some kind of utensil and cover it. Turn it upside down and cover it. And then when Yom Tov goes out, right, do what you want, right? That's whatever you want to do. Okay, good. So then he goes on here in Bet Yosef. Right? But he says, one thing you got to be careful, right? If you're going to do this, be careful that the utensil should not touch the egg. Okay? So you understand why? So the reason is because if you touch the egg with utensil, you'll move it, right? So you're not allowed to move the egg. That's the problem. So they don't want you to do that. Okay, so he brings here the source for this in the Bet Yosef. Yerushalmi beberesh perek meshirim, right? That brings Yerushalmi. Vevio Arosh, and the Rosh brings it. Perek kama de betzar, right? V'siman shin yud. Katabti divrei Rav Magid says I wrote the words of Rav Magid. V'divrei Tumat edition. But Tam Yerushalmi is there, right? They brought the reason for the Yerushalmi. Garasina Yerushalmi beresh perek meshirim. So it says there's also Yerushalmi in this perek. Betzashin ol da b'yom tov. It says there that if an egg was laid on Yom Tov, samchin lakli bishvil shelot yitgalgel. So he says what we do is, right, we place like a utensil next to it in order that the egg shouldn't roll away. So in other words, if there's like a slope, if that ground is like slanted, what's going to be is the egg will roll away. So in order to prevent that, right, you put some kind of utensil there to stop it from rolling away. That you can do. Okay, interesting. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch and see, right, what he says about this. A lot of interesting ideas. Okay. So it says here Shulchan Aruch, mutar lichpot alea kli k'dei shelo tishaber, right? So as we said, right, you're allowed to overturn a utensil on top of the egg in order that it shouldn't break, to protect it from breaking. Ubilvad shelo yiga ba kli, right? But just be careful that the utensil should not touch the egg, because otherwise it'll roll away. You're going to move it. I would like to see the Mishnah Berurah here, about this, and I'll tell you why. Because there's a little bit of a question here, which is like this. My question is like this: that there is a rule like this that you can move muktzah in an indirect manner. So the question is, why isn't this called moving the muktzah in an indirect manner? Right? Since you're not doing it with your hands, you're just like pushing it with the kli, with the utensil, right? So why is that a problem to do that? So let's see if the Mishnah Berurah picks up on this question. I'm curious. All right, let's see if we get lucky. All right. So yeah, he doesn't talk about it in Mishnah. Doesn't mention that question. Okay, interesting. Let's see if anybody else picks up on it. Otherwise, we'll have to leave that question for another day. Okay, there's a Taz here. Okay, let's see what the Taz says. No, it doesn't say. Okay. There's Pri Megadim. Let's see Pri Megadim. Maybe we'll get lucky with the Pri Megadim. Okay. Yeah, so he says here to look in the Magen Avraham. Okay, interesting. Which is going to be in the next halakha, it seems. So over here, I don't see the Magen Avraham. Okay, whatever. So anyway, I don't see any answer to that question. Unfortunately, I don't see any answer to that. Hmm. So let me explain to you, by the way, a little bit about this, what I'm talking about. The reason why you're allowed to move muktzah in an indirect manner is because you're doing it with a shinui, right? That's the thing. You're doing it in the abnormal manner by moving it indirectly. So, you know, maybe you could say right here that it's not called abnormal in this case for some reason. That's probably, the reason why, but I'm not really sure how that works. Like, why isn't that called abnormal? Not really sure about that. Okay, interesting. There's another Mishnah Berurah here, but I don't think he talks about this. Let's see. Another one. No. Okay. All right. What can we do? Okay, so we're done with this and we're done with Dalid. Let's go to Hey. Right, so this tour we already did. So let's just see in the Bet Yosef here. We did this tour yesterday. So let me just see what it says in Bet Yosef. Yeah, so right, what we said in the tour was like this, right? That if you are talking now about 2 days of Yom Tov, because we're talking about the diaspora, right? Like we had here, and that's last week, Shavuot, right? So we had Wednesday and Thursday. In Israel, they only had one day, right? We have 2 days. So it says the halacha like this, right? The tour that if the egg was laid on the first day of Yom Tov, it's allowed on the second day. Why is that? Because they're not both Yom Tov, right? Only one of them is Yom Tov. It's just like a doubt or whatever. So therefore, right, either way, it's allowed, right? Whether today was Yom Tov or tomorrow is Yom Tov, either way, it's allowed anyway, right? It comes out the same. So, but it says if it's Rosh Hashanah, then it's not allowed, right? That's what the Torah said. Why is Rosh Hashanah different? Because the way the rabbis decreed the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is not like any other 2 days. It's like considered like one day of holiness, like 48 hours. It's like one long day. So therefore, when it comes to this concept here on Rosh Hashanah, it's not really 2 days, it's like one day. So there's no doubt there, whatsoever. Same thing also, right? What about if you have going with Shabbat to Yom Tov, right? Not allowed. Or let's say Yom Tov comes before Shabbat. Same thing, not allowed, right? Because they're both holy. So here the Bet Yosef brings a source for this halacha. Interesting, right? The Perek Kama, it's in the first Perek of what? Of Betzah, right? Dal Amud Aleph. Itbar Shabbat v'Yom Tov. Rav Amar nolda bezeh asura bezeh, right? So Rav says if it was late on one day, it's forbidden the second day, right? Shabbat and Yom Tov. But Rabbi Yochanan Amar nolda bezeh muter bezeh. Rabbi Yochanan says it's allowed on the second day. Machloket. Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Itmar tu hatam. So it says over there, furthermore, right in there in the Gemara there. Shnei Yamim Tovim shel Galuyot. What about 2 days of Yom Tov in the diaspora? Rav Amar nolda bezeh muter bezeh. Right, Rav says it's allowed. Second day. Rav Asya Amar nolda bezeh asur bezeh. But Rav Asya says it's forbidden. Veitmar tu hatam. Another thing it says there. Shnei Yamim Tovim shel Rosh Hashanah. What about 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? Right, Rav Shmuel de Amet Arbayu. Rav and Shmuel they both say nolda bezeh asura bezeh. Right, it's not allowed on both days. Tetnan berishona ayu bekablin edut hachodesh kol hayom. So it says right there in the Mishnah that in the beginning they used to accept the testimony for the new moon all day. Pam echad nishtahu aidim. One time, what happened was that the witnesses, right, got delayed, right? They didn't come for a long time. Milvo mitkalkelu al beim beshir. So it says what happened was that the Leviim, the Levites, right, they didn't sing the right song that day because they weren't sure if it's Yom Tov or it's just a regular weekday. Okay, so this is a long story, so I guess we'll pick it up next time, right? It's probably going to take a while. So we'll go into this next time. So Bezat Hashem, right? Okay, we got something done. That's good. Baruch Hashem. Thanks for coming tonight. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. Stay holy, Bezat Hashem. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
God bless. All the best.